Because when you're looking at perception, it can be kind of nebulous. You know, like some of the clients that you had even before, like how did you guys make those some of those decisions? Like it's a huge undertaking if you're going to decide to change your entire, branding based off perception. That's a lot of work because it isn't only a logo. It isn't just the colors. It isn't just the messaging. It's like it's a campaign. So how's it going, Youna? How's your day?
Pretty good. It's Friday, so I was like a little more excited than not Friday days.
I can't wait. Honestly, this week has been so crazy,
Yeah.
and I hate to say that because it's starting to be like that's how it is every week. On Friday, I'm like, it's a crazy week. I'm like, oh, I sound like a tape recorder. We all do like, but honestly, I think I mean, last weekend we kind of had to work, so that was nice. This weekend, I don't think we have to. I don't think there's
I
anything.
don't I don't think so. Just a little bit of ADA thing. But it's okay. I got it. So
It's not too bad. Well, thank you so much. I been wanting to do a video with you since you started. So I thought this is good. This is a good time. Just a good way to start off the new year 2021. Those of you guys listening and watching, thank you guys so much. You're listening to a series that we have at Pastilla called Brand Therapy. And myself, I'm Rudy Manning. I'm the owner of Pastilla. I'm a creative director that have been working in the industry for actually close to 20 years. I've had and run Pastilla for about 16 years. And in those 16 years, we've serviced clients from startups and smaller businesses all the way to Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies in basically almost every aspect of advertising, creative development, interactive motion space. So we've had our hands on a lot of different elements of the creative field. And with that, where we're at now, this series really kind of brings a lot of the things that we've been learning over the past 16 years. And one of the threads that I found through all of the different types of projects is how important and crucial is our branding mindset been to everything that we do. So this series is kind of a way for us to give back to founders, entrepreneurs, CTOs, people who reach out to agencies like ourselves, like Pastilla, to give back and talk about our experience, the things that we've learned from our clients and other people that have even worked with us that we've learned from, and giving some of that back. So hopefully you get a lot of this video. And so today I have an amazing special guest today. She is one of our newest members at Pastilla. She is our art director, Youna. And Youna, if you can give a little background about yourself, that would be great.
sure. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everybody who's watching this video. My name is Youna Jang. Thank you for having me for this video, Rudy. I've been working as an art director, focusing on brand experience design for a grocery store company to transportations and more. So I'm really excited to share my experience around different cases of the brand evolutions and how that affected their brand perceptions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love that you're a part of this because I mean, in a short amount of times that you've been a creative, you've actually been involved in some really interesting projects that I see as really key to what you're going to bring to Bastilla as a creative thinker and as an art director. Like your big picture mindset, this focus on the big idea has it really resonated well with me. And because there's a lot of different projects that we do, and we wanted somebody, needed somebody that had that same level of clarity on the big picture and perspective. So today we're going to be talking about brand perception, guys. So there's a lot of different topics around branding, and brand therapy is obviously a slew of different topics. And we're going to focus on what is this idea of the perception of your brand. Like how does it work? Why is it important? Why should companies think about it? How does it fit within brand strategy? This whole concept of branding is obviously kind of nebulous to a lot of companies anyways. But the idea of creating a strategy purposely that creates a perception and impression about your company and that connects directly to your audience to provide the exact type of impression that you want to give isn't just a random experience. It's something that is thought through by designers and creatives and strategists to make sure everything is aligned to what the outcome of the business, the outcome of the impression of the brand is. We kind of understand in a general sense, I'm assuming here what brand strategy is, which is, aligning the brand's different attributes, the positioning, the pillars, the how they sort of compete in their space, and really clarify that messaging all around that, and then create the identity system and everything else that sort of goes along with that. The brand perception I see is a sort of a subset of that, if you will. Right? If you kind of see it like a subset of that, I think it sort of weaves in between.
I think, in other words, if I could put it in a different way, a brand strategy is the internal voice that includes, like you said, the brand purpose, promise, but the brand perception comes from the external voice. So it's like, how your audience feels about your company.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's lots of different reasons why this is important, right? And often clients come to us for lots of different types of project. And one of the things that I think, I feel that we do well is we ask the big questions. Sometimes they're hard questions. They might come to us and say, we need a website that has so many implications in that comment, and thinking of, okay, I need a new website, but why? Who's coming to your website? Why are they coming? What has been working? What hasn't been working? And a lot of times what we'll find is really it comes down to some shift in the perception of the business or something that wasn't done right in the beginning. And the audience and the perception of the company doesn't align quite
Right.
well. So what we do in the beginning when the client comes to us, we get to that point where we're asking, number one, we ask, what kind of thinking and research have you done before coming to us, right? We want to learn what they've done that got them to say, here, Pastilla, we need a new website, or we need a new name, or whatever it is, right? But from there, most of the times it's very kind of surface level. As we dig deeper, we do often find there's a misalignment there.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So I agree. And I think adding to that, we would talk to the clients, but also talk to the audience to understand the industry. So we would just look at a lot of other case studies too, right? To gather the data. And we also read a lot of comments and reviews too, just so that we can really, really hear the true voice and true opinions that other people have towards to this brand.
Yep. And at the end of the day, it's a big deal, right? If your audience isn't resonating with the message that you're giving across, ultimately it could be hurting your bottom line, right? You could be missing opportunities in who you're in the opportunities to build brand equity, build brand loyalty, and obviously, I'm guessing even losing some revenue as well. So I think it's something that is really important for companies to think about. Why do companies need to do this? Like maybe in our experience, right? Like the things that we've gone through. When have companies come to us when this is actually needed?
I think it can be many reasons. So it could be market trend, it could be growth of your company or change in your service or product. And I think it could also be an external circumstances like COVID.
Sometimes clients are too close to their work as well, right? Like they see the work day in, day out, or they see their brands and they have this like locked vision about what it is, and it isn't often true.
Right.
So that's kind of where we have to do some of the work to figure out how to get there, you know. And you know, I always joke around, people are constantly saying, like, when I'm talking about intuitive intelligence, they're like, well, what does that mean, what does that mean? And it's like something that, it's not a brand new term, but it's something that I've adapted myself in my vernacular, where it's like a perfect balance of understanding how to work with your gut and listening skills, and having that empathy of that type of customer that they're trying to reach. And then also looking at data as well to help inform these values. Because when you're looking at perception, it can be kind of nebulous. You know, like some of the clients that you had even before, like how did you guys make those, some of those decisions? Like that's, it's a huge undertaking if you're going to decide to change your entire, you know, branding based off perception. That's a lot of work and a huge commitment. So there needs to be, that decision needs to be informed by a lot of different, you know, from a lot of different points of views and factors, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's not always the branding that's going to solve changing or revolving the brand perception. It's sometimes just like a campaign, or it could be a change of social media language. So it really depends. If you were to ask me, will my brand have to rebrand the whole identity in order to rebuild the brand perception? I would say no. And here's an example. So this discounted retail store going local to nationwide had two very dramatic external opinions from their, I mean, not only their audience, but like people who are not even their audience. If you are a fan, you would be a like huge fan of this store. You would know when the truck is delivering the whole new deals and everything. But if you're not a regular to this store, you just wouldn't think of yourself as an audience. But what they could offer changed from limited discounted product to way bigger merchandise by creating their own product. So it was really great change that the company was making. But because they weren't able to really reach out to people who weren't really interested in the discounted store. They wanted to challenge themselves to create louder voice and make presence by making no by breaking the Guinness World Record, which was laying out everything they could possibly supply in a huge field to show what they can offer to the customers. So by breaking the world record, like they were able to reach out to different customers who were not even aware of them because they were on news and everybody really talked about it. So they heard people saying like, wow, a discounted store can do this, or like, wow, they donated everything because they did at the end of the event. So it was really really exciting events, and it was huge. It was so amazing to see a lot of product laid down in a huge field. So what they did, I want to emphasize this, like what they did was they focused on what they were best at. They were really confident about the number of assortment and the merchandise they could offer, and they really pushed that limit. So I think it's a really great example of changing their brand perception without doing the whole new branding, right? This campaign really helped them to make their presence in the world, and it was really amazing just I don't know, just looking at a lot of those merchandise.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, is your name in the Guinness World Book of Records?
No, unfortunately, no. But I was part of making that happen, and it was amazing.
Cool. That's awesome. Did you so what was the perception, like, can you talk about like what the perception was before and then what it was after? Or like,
I don't know if they're going to be happy if I mention too much about the negative comment they got.
okay,
But
but it's a brand that got negative comments.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you think about stores that sells like cheaper, discounted product, usually the store experience is not as fancy or clean as Target or like bigger retail stores. They did try their best to keep up with the cleanness, but some stores didn't offer, those, luxurious experience in the store. So that was one of the negative part. But I think right now they're doing amazing job, and they're putting their effort into refreshing a lot of their stores now too.
So was an entire campaign that then culminated at the end with this big huge event, right?
Right.
Like with all the products.
Right.
Okay, so it was like it was a build up, and that was kind of like a big part of it. And if I'm understanding correctly, before the perception wasn't it was considered like, even though the products were low price, they were also considered low quality.
Right.
The experience was low, and so like bringing you guys into doing that other work, right? The campaign was basically taking the brand to the other side and showing the more elevated, more refined, smart, rather than it's cheap, it's a smart purchase, like creating that whole mindset there.
Right. Right.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really really cool. Um, and I mean, I think that honestly, like, I think we could almost like end the video with that case study, with that idea and that thinking. I think that's awesome. When we first started our agency, I to throw in the word branding was like the most nebulous thing for companies unless they were like a big company. And it was always like the specific ask, which is like a logo or this or that, whatever it may be. But I feel like what it has done to designers and creative agencies and digital agencies like ourselves, it has expanded the value that we can deliver and help a client. We can actually see more return, or the client can see even bigger value and some monetary return into the work that they've invested with us, right?
Yeah.
But I like that because it isn't only a logo. It isn't just the colors. It isn't just the messaging. Sometimes it is just the messaging, but sometimes it's not. It's like it's a campaign, and it's a specific campaign that just is focused on changing that perception. One client that we had about a year and a half ago was a biopharma company that came to us. They had actually been around for, I think, close to 30 years, and they were pretty much under the radar. And I'm not sure if I can name. Well, I guess I can name the company. It was called MT2A. They were in the biotech industry. It was a biotech industry, and they had come up with a really amazing. It's not necessarily an oxygen substitute, but this biotech company had come up with a revolutionary product, and they had really, done some really progressive things over 20, 30 years. And some of it even, some people could say controversial and aggressive. And they wanted to pull away from that perception that the company had had in the first 20, 30 years. And they wanted it to feel more progressive. They wanted to raise more money. And so they came to us, not necessarily with that specific ask of like, changing the perception, but what they said is, we need a new name, we need a new logo, we're looking for new investors, and we want to look fresh. But as we started doing the strategy work, we started realizing like the key thing, although we ended up changing the name to 8 Biomed, we ended up, designing an identity system. But the key thing that we did within the strategy is we helped them define how to describe their product. That right there changed basically everything for them. And the most important thing on top of that we did is that we really focused in on understanding who they were communicating to right from the beginning, which was investors. They needed to raise money. They knew they wanted investors. Some of them were more familiar with this industry. Some of them were not. So they needed to find a way to describe what they did in a way that was more, was a little more friendlier, and it would connect to somebody in terms of what they did. So you didn't have to be a scientist to understand what the terms was. So that was probably the biggest value that we got. And we actually ended up defining it as fluid oxygen. There was some other elements to it, but the way they had described it before, it was very, very different. And that came from, understanding the product, the vision, the idea, who they want to talk to. And then from there, we took off, right? We built from there, we finished the strategy and then the identity system. But just that little messaging alone changed the total perception of how people, investors, perceive the product, and the brand and the name, and even just obviously the visual identity and everything else did the job and complemented everything else as well. But the most important thing again was that one messaging component.
That part where it's not, a whole new branding, but it's really one thing that we have to, give a little tweak. Yeah. That's really interesting example.
One of the clients that we have, Warner Pacific, they've been around for 40 years in the health insurance industry. They focus on, they're basically a health insurance wholesaler. So health insurance brokers and agents go to them and work with them to basically sell other types of insurances, right? They sort of kind of like a funnel for lots of different brokers to then be able to get quotes easily and so forth. It's a whole separate thing, industry within the health insurance industry. But at the end of the day, it's wholesale insurance sales mindset. They hadn't really evolved enough, and they had some different leadership that was happening, and they came to us because they had some interesting ideas and products that they had done that were technology based, but they weren't really able to communicate to the agents and the brokers and even the health insurance carriers that they were also like a technology company. So they wanted to be known as a technology company within the space. And they definitely were positioned to do that because they've had so much experience and reputation in California and in Colorado, in that space. And so, they knew their customer, right? They knew their business, obviously, really, really well. And so they came to us because they said, look, we want to look, the actual term was, we want to look like this is a company or a product that was developed in San Francisco, in the Bay. And it was just that was the comment that we kept hearing for the first 3 weeks. We ended up working with them for a really long time as a client for 5 years, but I remember that very early on. And we understood what they wanted, right? That space had not evolved. They had not gone through digital transformation. And we were there to not only design and build the UX and the product that they wanted, but also to come up with the name, the branding, the identity system, the messaging. So we started everything from scratch, from strategy, naming, identity system, all the way to product development. And 2 or 3 big companies that they ended up putting out over those 5 years. And it really transformed their business. It transformed them because now they're seen as a leader in that space, right? That reputation has already started to get built. So even though maybe the perception didn't have to shift dramatically, they wanted to have a new perception, so to speak. It wasn't a shift. It was more of an elevated perception. They wanted something new and different, and not because their business was bad. They were doing great. It was more because they felt they needed it to have that reputation inside the health insurance technology space. And they're doing quite well after a lot of the work that we ended up doing with them. So
that's cool.
Yeah. And so do you have I think you have another example?
Yeah, sure. So I think this is kind of similar to your story. It's about this new ice cream company coming to America, having the same product. They had the same ice cream that was in a category under better for you and healthier for you type of ice cream, not just a regular full of sugar ice cream. So it was the same product, but because they were coming from Europe, Sweden, they wanted to rethink about how they want to focus on their product to sell. Because even though it was the same product, and they were already kind of pretty well known in their own country as like a healthy snack type of company. They knew that American audience would not be as excited as you are people who are already like aware of eating less sugar and stuff like that. So it was first of all they were kind of trying to still have that same messaging where hey, like we are the healthier better for you company, but they realized that we have to focus on the creaminess, the delicious yumminess of the product itself before putting it as like hey, we're healthier, just because the interest in the audience was different. So before, on the packaging design, it had like let's fight sugar type of messaging. But after we transformed,
It's very Euro.
emphasized their strength in the product, which was creaminess, by visualizing it in a new packaging design system and also the naming too. We kept the uniqueness of the Swedish brand voice. So, like for example, if it's chocolate, we call it chocolata, like with some sort of Swedish accent. So that way, we kept the American audience's interest, and they really enjoyed like reading our names because the naming convention was really really fun. So the copywriter worked really hard with the designer. So like it was really fun way to keep the brand voice, but still focusing a little bit more towards to the creaminess of the ice cream and everything that we did. So I think that was, a great, it could be also a great example that we can talk about in terms of shifting the brand perception that was focusing on kind of boring. It's like healthy for you. Okay, we get it. To like, oh, like these are really creamy, really delicious ice cream from Sweden. So like, yeah, it was good branding project.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think that would probably get me. I mean, like I'm pretty conscious of like what I eat. I try to be as much as possible, more and more, but like definitely like a Swedish. You said Swedish, right? It's a Swedish ice cream that just kind of. I don't know. There's that element of I don't know, like international flavor or something just different, like right here where we're at, right? So that kind of gets you invited. So I can see that it's probably not going to be that big of a deal selling that in Europe.
Yeah. Another example, if we have time to share, I can quickly go over that. Is about Metrolink. So Metrolink is one of the clients that Pastilla is currently working together. They came to us saying that they wanted to become a lifestyle brand. But when we first began working with them, the main photos and copies that they were using weren't really reflecting the goal of becoming lifestyle brands. So we had to first define what the lifestyle brand means with them. That was a fun part, but since we're talking about the brand perception, I want to focus in that area. So the photos that they were using were trains, train stations, and some people in it. And so we were like, okay, if you want to become a lifestyle brand, let's talk to your audience. So we talked to their audience. And what we heard is basically them saying, okay, I don't want to deal with the traffic. That's why I ride, Metrolink. Or some people said, I want to go far away without dealing with the driving and whole, LA traffic thing for my weekend. Or a lot of people actually said that they wanted to do something else. Instead of driving, they want to get on the train, talk to their, mom and dad on the phone, or read books so they could use that time more productively. So we wanted to really focus on that and see how we can shift the image and the copy lines that we could use. So photography, we instead of train, we focused on the people. We focused on showing families and friends, professionals, or essential workers for sure. We also started using a lot of beautiful outdoor scenic photographies instead of train station A to B. They also used a lot of like ride, obviously, because it's a train company. But we started using words like explore or discover or fuel your adventure, or share your love with others. Type of those type of, more lifestyle. I mean, like, I love the word explore. Like, I love the fact that we are starting to use those words, because these are words from their actual consumers. That was what they were asking and what they were needing. So I think currently they're still trying to become this lifestyle brand, working with us. But I think it's really important for uh, brands to realize what kind of words or imageries that they put out, because that really helps the audience to understand who they are. It's really common that people, reflect themselves as the brands that they like or use.
So, because Metrolink is a commuter train, so for them to say explore is like, whoa, but then it's like, oh, right? Because you wouldn't expect it. Like, you wouldn't expect a commuter train point A to B to go explore. And the reality is you can, right? You can explore. There is a lot of like, I guess exploring would, allude to travel and so forth. That is totally possible. They go to places where you could do that, and save money and time, and have the ride be part of the experience. So I think that's awesome. And I know everything that we're talking about, it's not something, and I think you mentioned this earlier maybe, or we talked about it, where it doesn't happen overnight, right? Like, it's a process. It is an absolute process. With Warner Pacific, we help them start 3 different brands within Warner Pacific: Inshore, Pathian, Infowell. And those names already right there, and the identity systems, those businesses didn't exist when we started with them. And that it really started to create this portfolio of a completely different company of work that they've done, or businesses. And that took like 5-6 years, and it's still going on, so I know some of those businesses are still sort of trying to get traction. One of them, actually, I'm forgetting the biggest one, is called Big Wave. So there's actually 4: Big Wave, Infowell, Pathian, and Inshore. Four businesses in 5 years, all under Warner Pacific. Big Wave, that's the only one that wasn't our name, ended up becoming one of their biggest success stories, and they continue to. And it takes time. It takes investment. It takes trust in the agency that you find to work with. I think one of the things with us at Pastilla is that we, it sounds kind of cliche, but we honestly, like, seriously do care. Like, we, when we're talking about grinding along with the client, to get results, like, we don't sleep, right? Like, we'll do whatever we need to do to help get there, and we become part of their team, and becoming an extension. And I think a lot of times that's what it takes. It's anybody that says there's a set and repeat process to this is completely lying. It doesn't matter. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the time, not just the agency, but also on the client side as well. It's a collaborative thing. You know your product, your business, and your brand better. We are there to ask the questions, poke around, and decipher and assess what we believe should be the next stage of your company, whether it is to shift your brand or not. Very well might be that you're in a great path already. There might be something else that you need. I think if I were sort of, I'll just bring this up, Youna, and then maybe you can, like, if you want to end it on a thought. I just had this thought of, like, what the 2 biggest things that I think clients do, that we come at it right from the first kickoff call or the first intro call, is don't assume that what you understand is right. Like, it's the first level of thinking where you kind of to dig around, but you need to do some more research around it. And the research, like I said earlier, the intuitive intelligence is the combination of using data and using just, you know, conversation and understanding and connection, and using the product yourself and understanding like how do what are the issues that I have with it, what is my point of view, what is everybody's point of view, taking that collectively, and then taking the data to make some decisions around your branding, your the percep like if what we're talking about here, the perception of the branding, whether it has to shift or it doesn't have to shift. So
Yeah, that's a great ending. So I don't want to ruin that.
well, I mean, I think this is great, Yuna. I know this is our first video, and I think we're gonna do a lot more. So especially after this, and guys, again, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, or if you just subscribe down there at the bottom, share this with anybody that you think might take some value from this, and appreciate it. If you have any comments or any thoughts, please, write them down below. Give us a like, and that's it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yuna, too.